Hey, this is Nicole Kelly, host of Loud and Proud. Thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media.
What's up, everybody? This is Christian Heimel, host of Press Row here on Public House Media. Thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media. Once you're done with this episode, I hope you'll come check out my show, Press Row, where we talk about the biggest issues in sports with the analysts, experts, and reporters who cover them. No nonsense, hard-hitting interviews on the sports topics you're talking about. A new show comes out every single Thursday. And don't forget to subscribe on iTunes so you never miss an episode of Press Row. Thanks again for checking out the following broadcast on Public House Media.
Welcome to How to Write Good. I'm your host, Daniel Poppy. Find out more about me at danielpoppy.com. Also, check out How to Write Good on Facebook. I try to keep up the newest episodes on Facebook. I'm not so good at it. I've said that in the past. I'm awful with, social media. So this week is going to be a little different. We are not going to be having a word of the week. We're also not going to be having a logical fallacy of the week, unfortunately. But since this is the last week of February, I'm going to be having on my second guest. So my second guest is, right now he's working as a carpenter, and other times during the year he moves around a bit. He actually works as a cowboy, but he doesn't actually admit that. He says, "Oh, I'm seasonal help." If I could get a picture of him for you, I would, and you would definitely see, okay, this guy's a cowboy. He's not just someone working on a farm. He's actually on a horse. He's actually wearing everything he needs. But without further ado, I'd just like to introduce you to Daniel Fehr. All right, so what do you think about creativity? What are your thoughts on this? Or should I start somewhere else?
Start wherever. I mean, that's kind of an open statement.
Okay, so I've got a thought in my head about something. The next question I was going to ask you related to this. So I've got a thought about this, but I'd like to hear what you think. So what do you think makes someone creative? I've actually done a lot of thinking about this, so I have a fairly fleshed out answer, but I wonder what you think.
So what I think makes someone creative? More or less an outside-the-box thinker that has unique ideas and concepts, or the ability to think critically or think outside the box and create something. I mean, at its most basic form, it's someone that creates. Yeah,
so someone that is making something. Does it so my wife would say that she isn't a creative thinker, but she makes a lot of stuff. But it's typically the case that she's taking other things and bringing them together. Would that be creative or not? But she wouldn't say she's creative, but I wonder if that would fit into your definition. Or who would be?
So is she improving it or changing it at all, or is she just making it?
In my opinion, she's improving it or changing it at least somewhat.
So does she look up stuff on Pinterest or something?
Yeah, it's something like that. I mean, it's probably likely Pinterest, some type of thing like that. You look stuff up on Pinterest too, right?
Me?
I have a friend who does woodworking, and he gets tons of his ideas from Pinterest.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah, he's like, I've got a Pinterest. I get tons and tons of woodworking ideas from it. Okay, keep on going. I'm sorry.
I honestly have never been on it, so I don't really know. But
I've seen it,
I know what it is. I think if she's changing it or making it better or improving it, I think it's a degree of creativity.
Okay.
But if she's creating something, I mean, I think there's a difference between being creative and being a creator. If she sees something, I mean, if someone gives you the schematics to make a chair, and you make that exact chair, you're a creator. You made the chair, you created it, but you didn't create the chair,
Yeah, so you're not the, it's like, I know what you're saying. I can't articulate it right now. It's not coming straight out of your head, right? It's from someone else. So I can put together something from IKEA.
You're building something that someone else created.
Yeah. So it's not your own plan. No. Oh gosh, I had a question I was going to ask you about this. Okay, so I would say that to a certain degree, everybody, or almost everybody, there's always people who are outside of this area, but most people I'd say are creative to a certain degree. Would you agree with that?
I would agree.
So like to a certain degree, everybody's going to be able to take anything like information or whatever they're using, and then they're going to be able to have independent thoughts. I mean, imagine if they couldn't. So to a certain degree, everyone's going to be creative. It doesn't. I don't think it necessarily makes your thinking better than other people's, though. Like if you are really, really highly creative, I just think it is more out of the box thinking. It's just a different way of looking at things.
Yeah.
So
I think people. I don't think a better thinker or worse thinker is dependent on being creative or not. But and at the same time, I don't think being creative is necessarily good either. It has a lot of benefits, but there's this old saying that I always think about. It had a picture of an axe.
Yeah.
And it had the axe head was wood, and the axe handle was steel. So they switched the materials and said, just because you're unique doesn't mean you're useful. And I think that's pretty funny.
Because just because you're coming up with something different doesn't mean the thing you're coming up with is good. That's essentially what you're saying.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but at the same time, being creative, obviously. Without creativity, we'd still be in the Stone Age. So.
Yeah, I agree with that as well, actually. So, okay, so how you define creativity is essentially taking something that already exists, or maybe taking something that doesn't exist at all. You're using information or material, and you're making something out of it that didn't exist in the same way before.
Yeah, whether it
Would
be
that
a totally
be
brand new, unique entity, whether tangible or not. So, you could be an inventor who invents something totally new, or someone who writes a song that's totally unique, or writes a book that's totally unique, or if you're taking something that already exists and improving it in a way that's unique.
Okay. So, and we agreed that most people would fall into the category of being somewhat creative. What do you think, going back to the question I asked before, what do you think makes someone like really hyper creative? So that's kind of how they go about functioning in the world.
What makes someone hyper creative?
Yeah.
I guess I don't really understand the question.
So there's, for example, you do some creative stuff, which you consider yourself a creative person, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Not everybody, you wouldn't consider everyone a creative person, even if they go through the act of creating something new, right? Would that be correct?
Yeah.
Not
in a way.
like you wouldn't consider them creative. It might be the case that once in a while they create something, or they take something to make something new out of it, but it isn't to the same degree, if you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah, I agree.
So what do you think makes somebody like that? You want me to tell you what I think first, and then okay?
Yeah,
so I've been thinking about this a lot. I've been thinking about this a lot, and so I think to a certain degree you have to be somewhat intelligent. Like I've told you before, I don't think you have to be hyper intelligent to be creative. Otherwise, I wouldn't be creative, and I would say that I am, at least to a certain degree, more than the average person. So I think that you need someone fairly intelligent, and you know what executive functioning is?
No.
Okay, so executive functioning is like it's you controlling everything else that's going on in your mind, essentially. So it's you thinking about what you're thinking about, and then being like, okay, this is how I'm going to react to this. This is how I'm going to react to this. You're very aware of what you are doing yourself, and I think that creativity. Well, I think that if you have that, that's really good for creativity. But I think that for creativity and how it develops in people is that when they're younger, there's something in their life that they have to deal with that is unpleasant. And I didn't actually think about that. I think this was the case until fairly recently. But I think that there's like something that's unpleasant or pain or something they have to deal with that's just difficult. And they have the ability to put themselves out of that situation in some way. So they're, I have a friend and I can't remember what word, they dissociate from that situation, and they have to, take that situation and either separate themselves from it, or they have to figure out a way to make that situation good.
Right.
And I think that, I don't know, this is just my working theory, but I think that's where creativity comes from. They are there's something that they had to deal with, and they have the capability and they have the intelligence to work with it.
And that fuels creative thought.
Well, yeah, I think it sets up a way of thinking.
Okay.
So if you didn't have to deal with something like that, there's no reason to think that way. There's no reason to separate yourself from the situation and kind of think outside the box in that way. Either you're trying to make the situation better, or you're trying to get away from the situation. And if you don't have that, then there's no reason to do it. So I think that it's just like a way you think, and eventually it becomes a habit of your thinking. Right. That's why I think, like, talking to you before, I was saying that I'm not sure that people couldn't actually learn to be creative.
Right.
So that's kind of my working theory.
So I would agree that, I mean, I think it's a really common trait of creative people to have, like, either pain in their past or some sort of obstacle in their life that fuels their creativity, but I don't think it's necessary.
Okay. Why don't you think it's necessary?
So like let's say you get like an inventor or a designer for a company, like someone who's really, really creative.
Mm-hmm.
I know people that are very creative that don't really have a lot of struggles. At least struggles I know about, you know.
Yeah.
That are, apparent, I should say.
Yeah.
But like I know this one girl I used to work with, and she's like a marketing designer for a hotel, and her life's awesome. She's been.
Well, just because your life is it doesn't necessarily have to be the case that you, it doesn't have to be the case that your life is always going to be awful.
Yeah.
It could just be the case that it originates there. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Okay.
And I'm not, and you can totally disagree with me about this.
Starts.
Yeah, you can totally disagree with me about this. It's just a working theory I have.
I'm just not sold on it yet. You know?
Yeah.
Because it's as much as I think you're correct, it's hard for me to say, like, oh, all creative people are trying to get through this struggle. Because some people, I mean, I don't want to make it sound like, you know, pretentious to give it meaning where there's no, to give it more meaning than there actually is. Because I think some people are just naturally good at thinking outside the box and can formulate these ideas without that sort of push. I think there's people that are creative through, you know, positive reinforcement rather than negative reinforcement as well.
Okay, so are you, here, a personal question, are you creative through positive reinforcement or negative reinforcement?
Usually negative.
Okay. Because okay, so I am hypercritical of myself, and I would say that is because I think that's a good thing, actually, in the end, because I don't like to put out crap. I don't like to let people. I don't like to give, like, I think that I've run across people in the past, and I'm not trying to be mean at all, but I've run across people in the past who, like, make something, and it's just like it's, you kind of cringe at it. And for me, I'm like, I put it out and I'm just like, I've tried my best. Like, if it's that bad, it's that bad. And if it's all right, it's all right. And I'm okay with that. But it, like, I always try to, I never, I try to look at it the worst way possible when I'm making it, which is probably, it's not a very good thing for creating stuff, because then you're discouraged and stuff like that. But yeah, but then
you and I are very similar. Because I write all the time, and music, and man, I like to do it, but I don't. That's why I've been putting off recording for so long, because it's like, oh, I'm finally gonna expose. At some point, I'm gonna finally release this, and it could be like you said, like I could think it's awesome, and then it's really cringy, and everyone thinks it's really stupid and hates it. So that's like a huge thing for me. So I being self-critical.
Yeah.
I go over it and over and over it. And I mean, there's songs that I've been working on for years and years, not actively, but like off and on, that I just, they're totally different songs from the initial draft, just because I'll play it for like a month, and then I'll think, oh, this is garbage. And I'll scrap it or change a bunch. So it's hard, like you said, it's hard. It inhibits you from creating, because you're so hesitant to at least for me, I'm very hesitant to be content with it, because and I don't want to like attach myself to it because it's like, what if I put it out and it sucks and everyone hates it and thinks I'm an idiot? But at the same time, there's the independent side of it where it's just like, okay, this is my thing.
Yeah.
If people don't like it, they don't like it. No big deal. I made this. You know, at the end of the day, I still made this thing.
Yeah.
But it's hard because, like you said, you don't want to put out garbage. So
Yeah.
I, like, try and fine tune it, but then at the same time, like, what if it's not well received and all that hard work is put into garbage? So.
Well, I mean, I used to think more like that, and I've written forever essentially, not forever, but pretty close to it. And when I was younger, I like never let anybody read anything. And it was only until like halfway through school, like college, that I actually let people read stuff. And then I kind of figured, like, I realized I'm my own worst critic, which I'm like, okay, that's good, because if I think what I'm making is good, then it's like likely that other people will think that it's at least palatable, you know? So what I think is, like, I usually, if I put something out, I usually have tons of doubts about it, and I go through the process. I'm like, okay, like I go over it again and again, and I try to make it as good as I can. And one of my biggest fears is that I just like, I've made something and it's not up to my own standard. And then putting it out and it's like, oh, it wasn't good enough. I missed this. This wasn't good enough. And I've gotten to the point, and I still have a difficulty with it even now, where I make something, and if I'm like, yeah, that's good, I just like trust myself that it's good. Like, I'm just like, okay, that's good. Like, nobody else is going to be as harsh on you as you are on yourself. Right. And I'm just going to put it out there. And if people don't like it, there's always different, you know, tastes and different things like that people have. So,
well, that's what I struggle with, is like, I mean, I recently started kind of playing in front of people. I mean, I had such bad stage fright, and I did a few times in high school, like by myself, in college by myself, perform, but it was just awful. I hated it, and I just cringed thinking about it. But now I have that confidence. Now I have the confidence where I can do that at least, and, you know, take a healthy dose of criticism without being too hard on myself.
Yeah.
But so, like, yeah, just this last year really is when I started letting people read my stuff, and I'd perform my stuff for people that were closer in my circle of friends. And I mean, it's all really well received and everything. It's just still at the same time, it's like, oh, what if they're saying this just because they're friends?
Yeah.
And then at the end of the day, I step back and say, you know, it doesn't really matter. It's my, like you said, you know, it's my thing. I created this. I'm happy with it. If I'm happy with it, then other people will probably like it too.
Yeah, you're not that different than other people that there's going to be no one else who likes what you're doing.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I worry about, because they're like, okay, so for books, actually, even for music, you could probably do this. For books, I look at what's published, and I'm like, okay, my stuff is like at least good as this other stuff, right?
Yeah.
But I'm not so concerned about it being at least as good at this as this other stuff. I'm like, I usually think, oh, like, I want it to be really, really good. And when I look at my own stuff, I'm like, oh, I don't know if this is really, really good. But yeah, so
kind of good.
Yeah, what if it's just mediocre like all these other things? So I think it's helpful for me for reading other books, because then I see, oh, like, mine actually is at this level. And it sounds really bad. Like, I don't want to sound like full of myself when I'm talking about it, but it's just like, when I, like, assessing my own, what I'm making against someone else's, it's usually the case that I measure up in my own mind. Like, when I read somebody else's stuff that's published, I'm usually like, okay, this is whatever. Like, I'll assess it and I'll make a determination about whether I like it. And then when I read my own stuff, it's at least as good. So, but yeah, it's rough though.
It's hard, man. Well, and then that's one of the things where I don't think necessarily it all roots in creative people. I don't think it all roots from some initial sort of struggle, because there's some people that can just pick up a musical instrument and just play and are awesome, and everyone loves it. You know, just no problem. They can get up in front of 1,000 people and they don't even break a sweat.
Yeah, I thought about that as well. I think, I don't know. I just had a thought about that, but it's just slipping my mind.
I mean, I think a lot of it comes from reinforcement. Like, yeah, they've done it before.
Yeah.
You know, they have the confidence from getting all that out of their system. But at the same time,
Yeah,
you know,
it might be.
I've performed in front of people, and sometimes it was not good. And those are the times I always think of when I'm going to play again.
Yeah. Yeah, and it might be the case that, like, so if for example, you kept on making music and you had a following, essentially, you had fans, I think it would be easier to make music, and you'd be more confident because other people would be giving you feedback about stuff. And I mean, there'd likely be people saying that they hate you, but it'd be different if people were like, "Oh yeah, I really like your stuff. Like, keep on doing what you're doing." And I think that at the initial stage, it might be the worst. And yeah, I mean, maybe it's like creativity. What I presented is one theory. It could very well be the case that you just put things together in a different way than other people. Mm-hmm. Like, I have a really hard time remembering stuff, like, when I want to. But when I'm writing, it all just comes. It all just fits together. It's kind of bizarre. Like, I remember everything that comes into my head, essentially. I mean, I don't, but I remember tons and tons of stuff that comes into my head. But I don't, like, if you gave me a list, if you gave me a test, like, I was never good at remembering stuff for tests. I'd be like, I can't remember this. I know what it is, but I can't remember it. But then if I'm in a conversation, I'll remember it because it'll connect in a different way. And when I'm writing, it'll be the same thing. It'll connect in a different way.
Yeah. That makes sense. And I suppose that goes the same way for writing too. Is once you get something out there and you receive that feedback, that positive feedback, you know, it'll probably be easier for you to, I don't know, maybe not. Maybe it won't be easier for you to write. Maybe that's not a big deal for you, but for me, for writing music, man, it's hit and miss, because some days I can sit down and just write. I can write a song in an hour. And that's it, man, and it doesn't need to be changed at all. And then sometimes I have songs that I've been working on for years that aren't even close to being done because I just can't. Like, I don't want to cheapen it. You know, I can sit down and finish something and get the song finished, but it wouldn't be what I want it to be.
Yeah, no, I understand that.
Yeah.
I've got the book I'm writing right now. There are 5 or 6 chapters that were the original plan that I had. And everything else has changed it changed quite a bit. So there's 6 chapters that I didn't change. Like, they're almost the exact same thing I wrote down when I wrote them down. And everything else is just, like, reworked almost completely. So.
Well, do you think is it a good thing or a bad thing?
Well, it's just how it is. Like, I think that the chapters, when I was writing them the first time, I just knew what I wanted exactly for those chapters. And, it was a nice thing because I don't have to rewrite them, but I just think it's just how it kind of works sometimes. Yeah. And the other things, I mean, with my book, I spent several months, like 4 months writing the first half, and I've told you this before, and then I stopped because it wasn't right, and then I've spent the last 5 years I spent probably 4 months writing the second half. Or maybe I spent like 6 months in all writing the whole book, but I had 2 halves that didn't match up, and I've been spending the last 5 years trying to make those halves match up, and finally figured it out. But I mean, the chapters that those 6 chapters, maybe it's only 5 of them, but I'm pretty sure it's all 6. Those 6 chapters, they were kind of separate from the rest of the story, so I didn't really have to rewrite them. And when I read them, I like them, so I don't see a point of. Like, I'm like, oh yeah, these are good. I like this. I like how it goes together and everything like that and flows. And I just think it's a matter of, like, I don't know. I guess before I wrote anything, I put tons and tons of thought into what I want going on. So, and I kind of threw myself off with changing the book.
Right.
And I think that's kind of what happened with these. I didn't get thrown off. But then other ideas come into your mind, and then you're like, oh, I want to change it this way, and
you want to kind of explore those options too. I get that.
So yeah, I think
I'm done now, right?
I am reading through. I'm fixing any minor things right now. Yes. Right. So I just finished writing. The last chapter, revising it. It's Thursday, last week sometime. I can't remember what day it was. and now I'm going through running through the book a final time, maybe a couple times, because it doesn't take very long, and then I'm going to assess whether everything's good enough, and if there's any minor things, I'll change the minor things, and then I will be, if there's any major things, I'll change those, and then that'll be it. That'll be done. Well, it'll only be cosmetics.
What's the next step to being published?
So for me, I'm actually going a different route. I was planning on doing traditional publishing, but I've actually decided to self-publish it because it's a lot shorter process, and I think that it'll require me to do more legwork in the end. But at the same time, it's all mine. Like I'll be able to do, because if you go through regular publishing, the publisher takes care of everything but the book itself that's written, the words essentially. So I get to go through the process of getting the cover designed and having it how I want it to, and copywriting stuff. So getting all the grammar and everything like that correct, right. And putting it together and formatting the book. And I was really against that a few years back. But I don't know. There's a really big draw for me right now, and it also takes. Yeah, there's a really big draw because it's all my own thing then, and it's likely to not have a lot of people reading it at first. But if it has any value, I think people will read it, and it'll slowly build up as people read it.
Gotcha.
So, yes, and so I wasn't planning on doing that when I started the book at all. But it's just, I don't know, different life experiences and different ideas in my head about stuff. And I'd rather do that and do it the way I want. And I think that you can make it if you're a self-published author. Well, there are self-published authors who make it. I think that because a lot of people who say, they're like, oh yeah, you can't make money being self-published. But my opinion is that there's tons of people who write and are self-published, and a lot of people who write and are self-published aren't putting in the time it takes to make something that's a finished product. And I think that's the thing that turns people away. And I think that what it requires is that you just take the time and take the care for doing it in a really, really, really carefully, making it look really professional, making sure there's no typos, making sure everything looks nice, making sure your cover doesn't look like crap, it actually looks professional. Right. Maybe putting in some money. And if people see that finished product, they're like, oh yeah, this is done really well. And they're more likely to read it, and it won't get in the way of them reading it. So I think that's the biggest deal.
Right. So the statistics are skewed because people didn't go the distance, is what you're saying.
Yeah, essentially. I think that's why. The statistics are skewed because I think there's a really big body of people who just don't put the time and effort into it.
Gotcha.
So.
And you're a person that would put the time and effort into it.
Oh,
I'm assuming.
I think I've already put the time and effort into it.
Yeah.
It's been a while. It's taken longer than I wanted, but it's done. So that's all right.
Well, that's the same. Self-publishing is the same appeal as, being an independent musician as well.
Yeah.
So you get to keep it's all yours. You don't have a big name you don't have any marketing, but as far as
you have the internet.
Yeah, you have the internet. You don't have the connections that like a big publishing company would have.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you can still. There's plenty of independent musicians that are successful as well.
Yeah, and because of the internet, it just opens up a whole new market, I guess. That's the best word to describe it for what you're doing, because you can put something out on the internet and you don't necessarily have to even play shows, and people can just find your stuff and then spread the word of mouth if they actually like it. I was going to say something, I can't remember what it was. Crap.
Yeah, everything's so accessible now.
Yeah.
I
don't remember what I was going to say. It's just totally out of my mind. That's awful. I hate it. So, it was related to publishing. It was related to being a musician, but I can't remember what it was at all. What were you saying before? Maybe it'll bring me back. Like you were saying something about being a musician.
I'm just saying it's independent musicians. The pros and cons of being an independent musician are you retain the rights to all of your material. Mm-hmm. You make all the decisions musically for yourself, but you don't get that big. You don't get the networking connections like you would with a major production company.
Yeah, that's not bringing me back, but it's not. I thought it would, because that's what it sparked it, and I just Yeah, I have a really big draw to just doing things on my own now, and I figure like, now I remember. Have you heard of, my wife is reading his books, and have you heard of Hugh Howey?
No.
So Hugh Howey he has a trilogy that's really, really big. And he actually started out self-publishing, and he decided he was going to have a certain amount of stuff that he wrote every single month and everything like that. He just decided he would continually write it, and now he's like a New York Times bestseller. He stuck to it, essentially. Have you ever heard of Sufjan Stevens? You might actually have heard of him. He owns his own record company. You know that, right?
Yes, I did know that.
Yeah, and I'm
knew that
pretty.
He was an independent musician. Yeah,
he started this. Well, he has other people he records besides himself too.
Right.
So.
Oh, that I might.
Yeah, I at least know of one group that that records with him, or that doesn't record with him, but he records them. His Asthmatic Kitty is his record label. Oh, yeah. And that's what it's called. And there's at least one other group that I know that records under it. But I mean, he was just an independent musician, and I think he's pretty stinking big as it goes. But yeah,
yeah, he's really big. I don't really actively listen to his stuff, but I still know. I mean, he's big enough for me to know who he is.
Yeah,
big independent musician.
Yeah, so I think it's not unrealistic. It's just a matter of, I think writing, I think being an author, I think being a musician, whatever way you swing it, they're just hard industries. You have to work really hard to get there, like to actually make anything of it. And it's not even maybe a matter of, like, I think you have to be to a certain, like, in any industry, you have to be good to a certain degree. Yeah. You don't have to be perfect, but I think it's just a matter of, you just keep chipping away at it.
I mean, at the end of the day, you have to sell yourself.
Yeah.
I mean, you're marketing yourself. I mean, you can still be creative and, create something out of the interest of just expressing yourself or telling your own story. You're not creating something for the sake of you're not creating something to sell necessarily. But at the end of the day, you want you want other people to read what you wrote or hear your music and buy it. I mean, that's maybe not buy it necessarily with money either. Just
listen to it or read it or whatever it is.
Yeah. Connect with it somehow.
I mean, the best result is that people actually find it and read it or listen to it and buy it. Like, actually, it supports you. But I mean, at the same time, like I've told you this before too. I'm at the point where, I mean, if I don't make any money off of it, I'm going to continue to write and make stuff because that's kind of what I do. And I'm assuming, going to do the same thing.
Yeah, definitely. I'll always be a musician, regardless of any sort of success. And when I'm recording everything, this isn't me like trying to make it either. My only goal is on my bucket list, which is very small. It says record an album, and that's the only thing. My end goal is to complete the album. It's not to. Yeah. I'm not trying to make it or anything.
Yeah. Well, you're just. For me, I'm writing something because I really want to write something, and I really want to make, like, there's a story in my head I want to tell, and if it goes nowhere, I've still told it, I guess.
Yeah.
And
you still have that. I mean, further on in your career, everyone's got to have a first. Everyone's got to have a first book,
Yeah.
So. Even if, whatever, it'll only bring good things to you. I mean, it'll only benefit you in the long run.
Yeah, I think it's a good thing too, because it's just, even if you write one book because you want to write one book, I still think it's good for you, because it's just a huge project, and it's just, you've had to discipline yourself to do it,
Right.
Or even if you make one album, you have to discipline yourself to do it to make it good. And,
yeah, exactly.
And when I was thinking, before I decided doing self-publishing, I was going to go through the regular publishing route, and I realized how, like, big and difficult it would be. And I didn't decide on self-publishing because of that, but it helped me that I went through that whole process, because it's like, man, like, I've got to step up my game and make something really, really good. Like, this has got to be really, really good. And it's got to be good no matter if I go through regular publishing or self-publishing. It doesn't matter. So it kind of changed my mind about things,
Right.
Yeah. All right.
Long process.
All right,
It's a
so
lot harder than I thought it was going to be too. Sorry, I'm keeping interrupting you.
no, keep on going. You have one more thing to say?
was gonna
Can
say-
you
yeah,
can
I
you
was
give
gonna
us
say
one more? Can you give one more thought, and then we'll have to wrap it up
On creativity?
on anything, on whatever's in your head right now, creativity or creating or putting something out there that you're making. Whatever.
I think so. When you said being hypercritical of yourself, I think creativity in the form of like music and writing. So I divide creativity into two separate entities: tangible and intangible. Like, so, like tangible being like, oh, I invented this, or
Yeah.
I designed this, and then intangible, a piece of art, or in the form of writing or music. But I would think a lot of the intangible creativity is, in a way, for me, it all comes down to this necessity to communicate. I don't know about you, but I myself am really bad at communicating, and I can talk all day, but to really communicate how I feel or what I feel about something, or to express an idea, it's really difficult for me. But through music, for music for me, and for writing for you, you're much more into reading and writing than I am. But so when you read a piece of literature or a book or an article, and it really grabs you, I don't know about you, but that's how I feel. I'll hear a song that really grabs me, and I won't necessarily try to emulate this song, but I'll try and emulate. My end goal is to try and create something that also grabs somebody else.
Yeah.
So it's that need to. For me, it's a form of communication. Like where I can't express to you, just talking to you, I can express to you through what I'm creating.
Yeah, I know exactly. I've been experiencing that myself, actually. All right, Dan, thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you, Dan. Thanks for having me.
I hope we can have you back soon.
Sounds good.